4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the MCTV Weekly News Update. I'm Dave Akin.
And I'm Dexter. Tonight we're going to take you around the world with news regarding financial scams happening to women in Asia, as well as the Pakistani elections, and the hottest news in health in Hollywood. We've got a lot to get through tonight, so let's jump to our first story. The civil war in Syria may be expanding due to an air attack by Israel early Sunday. While the skies were still dark, and the attack hit the Syrian capital, destroying tightly secured military bases and killing more than a dozen people. Israel would not confirm any involvement in the attacks, but analysts say that there is reason to believe that they are intervening in an attempt to stop weapons traveling from the Syrian government to Hezbollah, the Shiite militia, or a political party in Lebanon. Because of these attacks, there is a lot of speculation that Israel and Lebanon may be entering the Syrian conflict soon. The Syrian government publicly condemned Israel for the attack on Sunday. They said it, quote, opened the door to all possibilities. According to Syrian civilians, the strikes affected bases of the elite Republican Guard and storehouses of long-range missiles, as well as a military research center that is said to be the country's main chemical weapons facility.
President Obama is also facing pressure to take action on another Syrian issue. The White House isn't backing away from the so-called red line the president laid down on Syria. Jay Carney insisted that when the president warned about the use of chemical weapons as a game changer, he never specifically said that if X happens, then Y will happen. But some viewed the Y as military action, and there is mounting pressure to respond. Dan Lothian reports.
As President Obama searches for common ground on his domestic agenda during a bipartisan golf game, a major foreign policy challenge looms in Syria.
I think it would be adequate for him to send a very firm message, perhaps in the form of a few cruise missiles.
But Republican Senator John McCain labeled the White House response so far a tragedy.
The president has avoided involvement in Syria, much to the shame and disgrace of the United States of America.
Is this an accurate or inaccurate portrayal of how the president has been handling the situation?
We strongly disagree with those comments. The fact of the matter is, jumping to conclusions and acting before you have all the facts is not a good recipe for weighty policy decision making.
And White House aides argue the administration has taken significant steps, including tens of millions of dollars in humanitarian aid to the Syrian people and assistance to the opposition. But what happens next? Arm the rebels? A no-fly zone to protect them? The president won't rule anything out except, it seems, U.S. troops on the ground.
I do not foresee a scenario in which boots on the ground in Syria, American boots on the ground in Syria, would not only be good for America, but also would be good for Syria.
Well, this conflict in Syria is really causing me to brush up on my geography and pull out my old maps.
I've always been terrible with world geography, but I do remember that Syria is a huge supplier of oil, which usually translates to gasoline in some way. And I don't know about you, but I can't afford for gasoline to go up in price anymore.
Well, on a funny but serious note, scooter season is here. Heading to the eastern edge of Africa, there are times when it seems as though almost all the news coming out of Somalia is bad news. But times may be changing. CNN's Nima Gahir looks at how life is returning to normal on the small seaside section of Moha Gandhi Shoot.
It's the weekend, and on Mogadishu's main waterfront, families have come to enjoy the balmy waters of the Indian Ocean. Girls splash as boys strut and show off. Amid the rubble of the abandoned colonial-era villas, new developments are emerging. All unthinkable a year and a half ago when the Al-Qaeda-linked militant group Al-Shabaab controlled vast swathes of the city. Over at the village restaurant, this is the busy time for chef and owner Ahmed Jama. When he first came to Mogadishu 5 years ago, though, it was a very different story.
And when I opened this restaurant, they could not believe it. It's someone going inside in this place and he's going to have a restaurant.
In Mogadishu?
In Mogadishu.
During the war, at the height of the war.
This was a front line.
Where we're standing right here.
Yeah. This was the grave area. And no one goes on.
Today, it's one of the most popular places in town. One of 5 restaurants, all called The Village, owned by Ahmed.
They never seen it lasted 20 years. People go somewhere, have a nice, fresh coffee, and also have a nice, fresh food. It seems like my restaurant is makes to open the wall and see, you know, they have a life before. They never have a life before.
For the first time in a very long time, Somalis have a choice of where to go to meet friends, enjoy cappuccino, and even a pipe of flavored tobacco, albeit discreetly. His patrons have developed a taste for green polenta, oxtail, and lobster Somali style. But of course, this is still Mogadishu. Al-Shabaab may no longer have a visible presence in the city, but they're still here. At the entrance to the village restaurant stand armed guards. The gate is fortified with sandbags. A gunman looks down from the turret. A legacy of the last time Al-Shabaab chose to make their presence felt. In November last year, 2 men came up to the front gate of Ahmed's restaurant with explosives strapped to their bodies, detonated the explosives, killing a soldier right here. At another restaurant, another explosion. 25 of his customers were killed. And yet Somalis, Mogadishu residents, still keep coming out to these restaurants day after day with their families. Ahmed says as long as his customers keep coming, he's willing to keep risking his life alongside them.
They're trying to stop the people feeling like they have a new life. I'm not going to stop for that. I'll just keep going.
For the first time in the more than 2 decades of Somali conflict, there's a sense of optimism. A newly appointed president, planned reform for the country's security forces, and promises of substantial support from the international community. Somalis, it seems, have had a taste of normal life, and Al-Shabaab violence, no matter how bloody, no longer holds the power it once did. Ni'mal Bagher, CNN, Mogadishu.
Sticking with good news, here's Caitlyn Flynn with the weekly highs and lows report.
After a fashionably late arrival, spring has finally made its way to New York and will not be leaving anytime soon. As Meyer's speech is coming to a close, I hope everyone has gotten to spend some time in the sunshine throughout this past week. Today we saw a mostly sunny day with a high of 72 degrees, and tonight's temperatures will fall no lower than 53 degrees. Get ready for a humid night, however, for humidity is at 85% in addition to 7-mile-per-hour winds. Tomorrow won't be quite as warm as today, with a projected high of 66 degrees and a 70% chance of rain. PM showers will come through around 8 o'clock tomorrow night and will continue into most of the day on Thursday. Taking a look at the 7-day forecast, Friday will be a partly cloudy day with a high of 77 degrees, but get ready for a rainy rest of the weekend. Expect a few showers on Saturday and showers all day on Mother's Day this Sunday. Checking out your national forecast, locally heavy rainfall and localized flooding are expected to affect North Carolina and Virginia tomorrow during the day. Highs will remain in the upper 70s to mid-80s this week across Florida and into Louisiana and Arkansas. The Midwest region can expect scattered thunderstorms tonight into tomorrow from South Dakota through Kansas. And finally, dry and warm conditions are forecast from Washington and Oregon into Montana. The entire country is experiencing warmer temperatures this week, a sure sign that spring is in full bloom. That's all I have for you tonight with your weekly highs and lows report. I'm Caitlyn Flynn, and back over to you guys.
Heading across the pond, we can find a rough start for French President François Hollande. He recently celebrated his first anniversary in office, but a recent poll shows that most of the French are not pleased with his performance. CNN's Jim Betterman tells us why Mr. Hollande's honeymoon period is over.
Il y a toujours un risque.
Even before he was elected, the French president told CNN that selecting any leader is a risk for voters. You just never know how he'll turn out, he told me.
Thank you very much.
But after his first year in office, many French seem to be of the opinion putting their money on Francois Hollande may not have been the best bet. No president has declined so far, so fast in the opinion polls as Hollande has. Nearly 3 out of 4 of his countrymen say they are disappointed with his first year. A plurality of French now say they think Hollande's predecessor, Nicolas Sarkozy, would have done a better job than Hollande has. The biggest complaint? Hollande's inability to halt the rising unemployment rates or declining economy. But political analysts say there's more to it than that.
The feeling that François Hollande maybe is a not decisive person, that maybe is lacking the leadership style that the French president normally needs.
Indeed, one leading news magazine here last month put out a cover story calling the president Mr. Weak. Perhaps even more worrying is the suggestion of another that France is in a pre-revolutionary state.
Voilà.
The reason for such alarmism is not Hollande's critics on the right, but the disaffection of his one-time supporters on the left. Many who voted for him, such as these steelworkers, believed his promises that their jobs would be protected. But they were not, and the workers, along with many others here, are disillusioned. Leading members of Hollande's own Socialist Party are openly critical of the president.
There's a bad indicator on the lost in trust of the president in his own electorate. François Hollande knows that he cannot govern with only 2/3 of the Socialist Party. He needs allies.
But Hollande is having difficulty finding them. His socialist critics say changing the government is not good enough unless there's also a change in policy that takes a clear turn toward the left. Under the French Constitution, Francois Hollande still has 4 more years in office, and nothing short of a revolution could change that. Still, increasingly, his supporters and detractors are wondering what could possibly change his political hand for the better if there's no change in the employment and economic picture. So far, only his quick decision to intervene militarily against the Islamicist revolutionaries in Mali gave Hollande a slight uptick in the polling numbers. Even his personal life, sometimes a source of popularity for presidents, has worked against him, with continuing criticism in some quarters of his unmarried relationship with a companion who some call the first mistress. Even dissolving the parliament and calling for new elections may not help.
If you are very low in the surveys and political crisis, you pronounce a dissolution and you lose the election.
That could backfire. It could be a very disaster.
Could be a real political and electoral disaster.
So on both sides of the French political aisle, on the president's first anniversary in office, there are not many plans to celebrate. Jim Bitterman, CNN, Paris.
Sticking with international news, at least 20 people were killed and well over 30 injured when a tanker carrying gas exploded on a highway near Mexico City Tuesday morning. A local government official said the blast occurred in the municipality of Ecatepec in the state of Mexico. The Secretary for Citizen State Security in Mexico State, Salvador Nemes, said that 2 of the victims were children. Flames engulfed cars and houses near the explosion. Video from CNN affiliate 40 TV showed. According to initial police reports, the tanker was speeding and the driver lost control, crashing into several homes and cars before exploding. Mexico's state-run Notimex news agency reported. At least 20 homes were damaged and 15 vehicles burned, Nemes said.
From tanks to trains, another tragic accident has recently touched Europe. 1 person was killed and 17 others were injured after a freight train derailed in northwestern Belgium. A local official told CNN several explosions and a fire broke out following the derailment. According to Infrabel, the state-owned company that operates Belgian railways, the exact cause of the reported death was not immediately known. The train, owned by Belgian freight company SNCB Logistics, derailed between the towns of Schellbel and Wetter near Ghent. Some 350 area residents were evacuated from the area because some of the wagons derailed were carrying toxic chemical compounds, Acryl trial, said by Peter Mertens, spokesman for the local governor. Exposure to Akin trial can cause mucous membrane irritation, headaches, dizziness, and nausea, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency.
Ever been on a train that derailed?
I can't say that I have, Dave.
My father, he hates trains now. He was on a train when it derailed. He was stuck there for 4 hours. He adamantly refuses to ride on trains now.
I can't imagine. That must be absolutely terrifying.
Our trip around the world brings us to a warning on How Asian women are being conned out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Police have linked more than 10 thefts in Auckland to similar crimes in Melbourne, San Francisco, and Vancouver. In one case, a woman handed over $40,000 in cash and jewelry, believing she was cursed. Caitlyn has more.
Police say it's a global scam. This reenactment video was produced by American police after thieves stole more than $1 million from elderly Asians in San Francisco. Now it's happening here.
There was an Asian woman who approached me, and she wanted me to help her to find a Chinese doctor to cure her daughter.
And that's how it starts. The scammers chat with elderly Cantonese and Mandarin-speaking women, convincing them they have bad luck. They offer to help get rid of the curse by cleansing their victims' money and jewelry. The victim is told to put valuables in a bag and not to look in the bag, or else the blessing is ineffective. When the bag is opened a month later, their prized possessions are gone.
It essentially works on the sort of spiritual and cultural beliefs of these people, tying into bad luck and having someone able to change the course of that bad luck.
Detectives say it might sound crazy, but victims here have been conned out of more than $280,000. In one case, 3 women approached their victim at an Auckland flea market. They convinced her to hand over $30,000 worth of cash and jewellery. There have been 12 victims so far, but police believe there are many more too ashamed to come forward.
They normally feel embarrassed and stupid that they fell for the scam. That's why they're scared to come towards us.
These are the women police want to speak to in connection with the scam, but they're unsure if they're still in the country.
This week, people in Pakistan will head to the polls. With a political history plagued by military coups, dismissals by presidents, and allegations of corruption, this election is being dubbed the most important in Pakistan's history. Sigma Moshin has more from Islamabad.
In a country that spent most of its 66 years under military rule, this election is being dubbed the biggest and best yet. With 36 million new voters, more female candidates, more independents, more polling stations, and more observers than ever before.
So this time around, yes, we can expect a lot of changes to happen in Pakistan. Hopefully they will.
There's a new hope for countries, and I hope that this will change the situation in Pakistan. So I think giving vote this time would make a difference.
The Pakistan People's Party is campaigning to win a second term, led by the son of its assassinated former leader Benazir Bhutto. Even though at only 24 years old, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari is legally too young to stand for election himself. The PPP made history by completing a full term of government, but its record is questionable. The country's still plagued by growing extremism and sectarian violence, endemic corruption, and a broken economy. The main opposition comes from the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, led by one of the country's leading industrialists and richest men, Nawaz Sharif. He's been Prime Minister twice before and was overthrown in a coup and exiled when Musharraf seized power in 1999. Viewed as a religious conservative, he feels it's his turn to take back the reins of power. Hot on his heels is Imran Khan. The cricketer turned politician and his political party boycotted the last election, calling Musharraf a dictator. He says he's not resting on his laurels as a sportsman, celebrity or heartthrob. He's calling for an end to corruption, drone strikes and a reliance on Western aid. His party is being credited for pulling in the youth vote. Conspicuously absent is former President Musharraf. He returned from self-imposed exile to take part in these elections, but has been banned by a court from participating in politics. His party, the APML, has announced a boycott. Add to the mix major secular and liberal parties like the AMP and MQM in the northwest and southern provinces. The Pakistan Taliban had warned secular parties against campaigning. Party offices have been bombed and politicians from both parties have been assassinated. Despite an increase in violence across the country, all eyes are on May the 11th, when the people of Pakistan hope to have their voices heard by voting in a democratic government. Saima Mohsin, CNN, Islamabad, Pakistan.
I don't know too much about the Pakistani constitution, but if it's anything like ours, it's riddled with problems.
Well, now they get the pleasure of recounts too, and maybe with this democracy going on, we can send Jeb Bush over there.
In Hollywood this past week, a huge opening weekend for Iron Man 3, and actress Keira Knightley says, "I do." Carl Azus has more in your Hollywood Minute.
The competition was no match for Iron Man 3 at the weekend box office. The film, starring Robert Downey Jr., grossed $175.3 million in its debut weekend. That's one of the biggest openings ever on record, second only to The Avengers last year. The film opened a weekend earlier internationally and has so far grossed more than $500 million abroad. Pain and Gain, starring Mark Wahlberg and Dwayne Johnson, came in a distant second with $7.6 million in ticket sales, and 42, which tells the story of baseball legend Jackie Robinson, rounded out the top three. It was a big weekend for Keira Knightley. The 28-year-old actress and 29-year-old musician James Wrighton became man and wife. People.com reports it was an intimate ceremony in a small village in southern France. The pair had been engaged since last May. For Hollywood Minute, I'm Carl Azus.
College television is looking out for your wallet. You may think that you're getting a deal when you shop tax-free online, but states are missing out on an estimated tens of millions of dollars on tax revenue. Now Congress is taking action. Martha Shade has more in Consumer Watch.
Americans may soon have to say goodbye to tax-free shopping online. Now that the U.S. Senate has passed the Marketplace Fairness Act, online retailers are one step closer to collecting mandatory sales tax. Supporters of the bill include President Obama and big box retailers like Target and Walmart, which think the bill will level the playing field.
It's not an internet sales tax. It's the same sales tax they would pay if they walked into their local store and bought something over the counter today. It's just that the online competition doesn't currently have to collect it for every state.
eBay is leading the charge against the bill. The online marketplace thinks smaller businesses should not have to comply. Other opponents include conservatives and anti-tax activists.
A brick-and-mortar business has to comply with one set of sales tax laws. These internet providers would have to comply with 9,600 state and local sales taxes across the country.
Under the proposed law, people in states that have sales tax would pay the same amount of sales tax as they would in a store. Check out the interactive map on taxcloud.net to get an idea of what you'll pay in your state. The Marketplace Fairness Act still needs to pass the GOP-controlled House before it becomes law. For today's Consumer Watch, I'm Martha Shade.
Here's a bit of bizarre news out of Florida. 16-year-old Kiera Wilmot was arrested last week for her friend's so-called, quote, science project gone bad. Previously a student at Bartow High School in Florida, Wilmot was always the type of kid to stay out of trouble. But when she decided to mix aluminum foil and household cleaner in a water bottle, she ended up getting expelled and charged with possession and discharge of a weapon. The bottle exploded, which Wilmot was not expecting, and no one was injured. Though her friend's intents were not malicious, she was still arrested because, as the school district said, quote, the letter of the law demanded the punishment. Wilmot charges could lead to a 5-year prison sentence and a $5,000 fine.
So, I think there's a careful balance to hit here, because I really feel like this story could happen to any one of us. A prank gone bad or a prank taken too seriously. And it's a careful balance that we have to take. Now, what should administrators do?
A number of my friends have pulled these pranks, and it's terrible, but I think there is a specific balance that needs to be maintained. I think that it was a meaningless, it was a harmless attempt at screwing someone over.
Nonetheless, I'll be curious to see how she makes it in prison. In other news, this week comes from the Great Lakes region of the United States. This past Sunday, President Obama made a commencement address at Ohio University. He encouraged the graduates with optimism, saying they need to concentrate on being civilians, community responsibilities, and avoid anti-government arguments. He said, quote, unfortunately, you've grown hearing voices. It's government, nothing more than some separate, sinister entity at the root of all our problems. They'll warn that tyranny is always lurking just around the corner. You should reject these voices. Almost 60,000 people, graduates, friends, family, filled the university's football stadium as Obama returned to campus for the 5th time this year. This state of Ohio and many young graduates The student voters were very empathetic for his re-election in November. Obama also spoke about controversial topics he and the Republicans have been fighting over. His message was optimistic, a good focus on good citizenship, and mentioning to recovering economy. The president spoke about how this graduating class lived at the end of the Cold War, this beginning of the internet age, and terrorism in September 11th, recession and many technological achievements. He noted that this generation has been tested and possess a love for their country that can change it for the better. President Obama then encouraged the graduates to not only follow their career path, but to find a cause for greater good. He ended his address with the words of President Wilson, saying, quote, "If you want to make enemies, try to change something."
Well, that was quite the story.
It was. It's something about, you know, politicians in this political realm making speeches to our graduates coming from some sort of pedestal and talk to them as if to give advice.
I mean, on the bright news, he didn't say the F-bomb on television like our commencement speaker that's coming this year, Ernie Anastas. But that's what it comes down to. So
it is.
Before we leave you tonight, we would like to share the story of one bacon-loving grandmother in Texas who got a special visit from the Oscar Meyer Wienermobile. But she didn't just get to see the unusual vehicle in person, she also got to ride around in it. Nora Hartfell has the story.
Bacon. It's what started it all.
But I could eat bacon every meal, and I do.
Just a month ago, 105-year-old Pearl Cantrell let us all in on her little secret to a long, happy life.
I want other people to eat bacon. I tell them to. My kids all eat it.
And lucky for her, the right people were listening. And just like us, Oscar Mayer Meats took a special interest in the feisty, bacon-loving granny.
We've seen a lot of stories on the road, but not quite like this one, so we're very excited to be here. We know that she's an inspiration. Pearl's an inspiration for her community and friends and family.
Hitting the streets of her hometown of Richland Springs, Pearl is riding shotgun in the Wienermobile, waving to several generations of people that she's seen grow up over the years.
They found out the Wienermobile was coming for Pearl, and that everyone knows Pearl, and that she is an amazing woman.
Okay, one more, easy. And after the ride, it was more like Christmas time when she was gifted, what else?
We brought something extra special.
And Pearl's family says she deserves every bite of it. After the ride and gifts,
there you go.
It was time to get down to business.
Where's your bacon, Mom?
With her stomach and heart full, Pearl says this day marks a special memory on her lengthy timeline.
I will never, never forget it, as long as I live.
I'm not sure how I would respond if the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile showed up at my house, but only lewd jokes come to mind at this point, so I'm going to let you continue on that one.
Well, I think about the little things like, you know, how much should the parking meter charge if the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile is there? How hard of a time would he have if he had to parallel park between cars? These are some of the sort of more difficult questions that I think, you know, might happen if he shows up at your house.
But seriously, only eating bacon, and she's 105 years old. Apparently I'm doing something wrong with my diet.
Good honor.
Well, that's all we have for you this semester. I'm Dave Akin.
And I'm Zach Dexter. Be sure to tune in next semester, and thanks for watching.